Most IT project managers feel uncomfortable about project budgeting, but to be a great PM, you must know how to tackle all aspects of project management. And this knowledge gap may eventually undermine your credibility. That's why in this video we'll discuss 3 main IT project budget components. I'll show you the structure of a project budget and you'll learn how to make the budget as accurate as possible. But first we must understand why all the information about project budgeting on the internet is so generic. And frankly speaking, you'll always feel insecure about your skills in this area if you don't accept this critical fact. The fact is, all IT companies in the world have custom approaches to tracking the costs of a project. And for example, who is paying for what? If you run an in-house project, then obviously all the costs are on the house, on your company. In this case, you'll probably have an established process already, and it should be pretty transparent. But if you do a project for an external customer, then it's more complicated. First of all, you'll have 2 sets of numbers. The price of the project is the amount we charge customers for the project, and the cost of the project is the amount we plan to spend on it as a vendor. In most cases, you need to calculate the project's cost, and then your boss will add the profit margin and provide the project price to the customer. The second problem is knowing what counts against your project budget and what goes to the company's balance. For example, when you hire a new software engineer and provide them with equipment, is it the project expense or is it a company's overhead? Third, what about ongoing maintenance expenses? And imagine you need to build an infrastructure for a web application. So building the application is a part of the project. However, maintaining that infrastructure for the next many years is an ongoing cost. So the company needs to take this infrastructure on its balance sheet, but when does it happen? As you can see, there are many variables here. That's why the first step is to understand how your organization operates. You need to talk with your direct manager, project sponsor, and financial department to collect this information before planning the budget. As a result, they may provide you with templates and general guidelines on creating and controlling project budget. So in most cases, you don't need to bring this knowledge with you into a new company. But now we need to understand the 3 main components of an IT project budget and how to estimate and budget them correctly. Knowing the most significant expense categories is critical because the project management theory is overcomplicated and you don't need complicated processes here. That's because after you diligently complete the first step, you'll separate the company's operation costs from the project costs that you must estimate and track. And as a result, you'll end up with just 3 main categories: labor cost, hardware and infrastructure, and software licenses. Let's review them one by one, starting with software licenses. Here we discuss additional licenses required for the product or service to operate. And again, the standard software licenses and subscriptions we provide to engineers for their work should be included in the company's overhead. On the other hand, we must have a design phase at the start of the project, and in this phase you identify the key components, technology stack, and architecture required for your product. So your team and subject matter experts will help you identify the products, services, and software libraries that you need to license for commercial use in your product. In the same phase, you will identify the architecture of your product or service. In other words, you will identify what building blocks of hardware you need to run your product on. And as a result, you may need to purchase and install new servers in the office or choose a cloud computing provider like Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure. Then you can go to the corresponding website and use their price calculator to estimate potential cost. You can use a predefined template or select the components you need. After configuring the desired infrastructure, you can export the costs. And please never do it yourself. Work with your SMEs and team members to account for all the requirements to architecture. Also consider consulting with the provider's sales team, as they may help you avoid common pitfalls. Also, remember that your organizations or client's organization may have special agreement with these providers, resulting in special prices. Now here's a critical point from the real world. While you develop your product, you usually use minimal setup to reduce the expenses. However, software development best practices require you to have multiple environments. This means you'll need to have 2 to 5 instances of the same infrastructure for different purposes. They may have different setups and related costs. Alright, now let's talk about the labor costs. In theory, it's quite simple. You multiply a person's hourly or monthly rate by the duration you need this person for your project. If you have a dedicated team and allocated people, you already have all the rates and salaries. But if you need to hire people, you will operate with average estimated salaries for the given role. First of all, you need to understand the experience level for a role, such as a senior web developer with 7+ years of experience. Then you need to talk with your boss and discuss the maximum salary you can afford for this role. And usually you'll deal with standard salary ranges for typical roles. That will be your estimated rate that you'll use for budgeting. And you'll do it for all roles on your project. But obviously you can see a caveat here. How do you identify how much effort you need from each role? Moreover, what if you can't find an engineer with the salary you budgeted for? This leads us to a critical concept that will help you produce the most accurate project budget. And if you understand this concept, you will never feel anxious about project budgets and estimates in general. That's why pay close attention here. So here's how you get the project budget. You start from the bottom and sum the costs of each task to the work package and deliverables levels. This includes the cost of labor, infrastructure, and additional licenses, as we just discussed. As a result, you get your project cost estimate. Then you must perform proper risk management. This will result in additional tasks you'll account for on the deliverables level, but likewise, on top of that, you will have dedicated risk reserves. And when you add risk reserves to the project estimate, you'll get a cost baseline, and you will track your project's progress against this baseline. But that's not enough. You need to add 10 to 15% for the unknown risks as a buffer. And now the total number is your project budget. So this is the structure of the project budget that helps you create an accurate estimate. But you will never see a budget structured like this in the real world. Instead, it will be simplified and will be hidden under the hood of the overall estimates. Nevertheless, this concept reveals a secret that many project managers overlook, and if you understand this secret, you'll become a great project manager. You see, most PMs worry about estimating numbers, invoices, budget templates, and contracts. But the most crucial component of an accurate project budget is here. Project budgeting starts with proper scope identification. And you can literally forget everything from this video, because if you watch this video next and you understand how to identify project scope, the budgeting, the estimates will never give you any anxiety again. Click the video now.